Hi there, and welcome to today's Heard Online episode, in which we will look at insomnia and pregnancy. And the reason we're doing this today is actually that one of my clients, one of my BedTyme clients, specifically asked about this. She said, "Hey, have you done Heard Online on pregnancy? I'm pregnant. I hear all these things, and I'm scared." And I said, "That's a good topic. We should do that." And if you are pregnant or you're thinking about becoming pregnant, do know that we have a playlist called Momsomnia that is in the description of every new video that I think can be really helpful for you. We have, I think, 5 stories of women who struggle with insomnia during their pregnancy, and it was several of them actually, or at least one I know for sure. She didn't struggle at all her second pregnancy. And that was Sarah. Nice episode, that one. But anyways, before we jump in, I just want to share a little bit more of the backstory, which is, you know, to a large degree quite heartwarming. And this is that my client shared that she actually have had insomnia for many years. And then she found our teaching, found our channel. She started working with us in BedTyme, and she was doing well. She was doing so well that she thought something she hadn't, even considered before, which was, maybe I can become pregnant. Her insomnia had always, made her think, I can't have a baby because I have all this insomnia. She started sleeping better and got pregnant right away. And that is, of course, wonderful. And one thing that came to mind when I heard that was that it dispels this idea that is also common, that, oh, if you have insomnia, you're going to have fertility problems, which there's no evidence whatsoever for that, but we have a lot of anecdotal evidence in our channel that isn't true, and this is one of them. So I just wanted to share that little heartwarming thing. But of course, now that she is pregnant, then she said she hears things about, like, okay, when you're pregnant, it's important to get enough sleep, or this and that will happen. So this is why we're doing this Heard Online episode. So I didn't have it, like, there was no specific article that she mentioned. So the first thing I did was just I went over. I don't know what to say. I went to Google. I should say went to Google and Googled it, and I actually must say that I found this quite nice. If we look at this, so if you Google insomnia and pregnancy, the kind of default result here says that women can experience insomnia during all stages of pregnancy, but it tends to be more common in the first and third trimester, which is just neutral. Some observation there, but here you see it says it's normal. It's normal to have trouble sleeping at any point during your pregnancy. Which it's always nice to hear these things normalized. And this one too, insomnia during pregnancy is normal and affects 78% of pregnant women. And generally, when I just perused here, most of what you find when you look here is actually very reassuring. It basically just says, it's something that happens as we are pregnant. It's very common. So I thought that was really nice. But then what are we going to do Heard Online about, right? So I I purposely found one article that was more of the alarmist type that we could look at, and it is the following one. Let me share it with you. This one. It is like a review article from Obstetric Medicine from 2015, and it is, again, it's a review article. This is not experimental, but I thought we could look at some things that I thought were really interesting. Firstly, in this kind of sleep across trimesters, the authors also conclude that it's particularly in the third trimester that there's a lot of trouble sleeping. And that's expected, right? Because you have like this big belly and it's uncomfortable, etc. But listen, this was interesting. I thought pregnant women do not always see their sleep as being a problem. 97% of 127 pregnant women surveyed reported symptoms of disrupted sleep. 97%, which means that 3% were probably like just pick the wrong box or something, right? 97% reported disruptions to sleep, but only a third of them identify themselves as having a sleep disorder. I thought that was actually quite nice to see that, whether whether we perceive that something is wrong with us is often just that, a perception that we can, you can have, as this points out, like 127 pregnant women, virtually all of them had problems sleeping, but only a certain amount of them said, "Oh, this is not how it should be. This is something wrong." And this is not in any way to like belittle anyone's experience, but when it comes to insomnia, how we think about ourselves, how we think about our own experience is key, right? So I thought this was really interesting here. Now, let's go to the meat of this one, which is like the consequences of insomnia, and here, we'll see some of the some claims being made, and we can take a critical look at those. So, firstly, we'll start here. The authors say short sleep, as assessed by sleep questionnaires, may increase the risk of gestational diabetes, with a relative risk ratio of 5.6 among women sleeping less than 4 hours a night versus 9 hours a night. And when you first hear something like that, it can seem, alarming, like, oh, if I sleep little, I'm going to get diabetes. But then if you think about this for a second, you can see that this is not like a randomized study where they make, some people have, trouble sleeping, and then they look at like the two groups and see, okay, in which group do we have more diabetes. This is self-assessed. These are questionnaires. And what is the cause and effect here? Well, if we think about it, what do we think is most likely? That somebody sleeps less and because of that gets diabetes? Or do we think that some of these women who developed diabetes during their pregnancy, they had to naturally pee a lot? Maybe diabetes is also weight related. Maybe it was the women who gained more weight that had diabetes, and the weight may have caused them to have trouble sleeping, and the frequent peeing can have caused them to have trouble sleeping. Why? And to me, that is much more likely to explain this as anything else. When we see it that way, then you see, okay, sleep had nothing to do with it, or sleep was just a side effect of the diabetes, if we will. And then that can be really reassuring to hear. And they kind of repeat that here. And if you go lower down there, this section was about like diabetes and blood sugar, which we talked about already. And then they say poor sleep quality may be a risk factor for developing depressive symptoms during pregnancy. And that's just a quote there. Well, to me, this is one of those things where, we can learn that all these inner struggles really come from the same place. If we're finding ourselves feeling kind of sad and we think, I shouldn't feel this way, this isn't the way it should be, I want to get rid of this, then it's like, our brain has sort of a message for us and we don't want to hear it. Then it is amplified, just as we amplify a message that doesn't get through to a friend of ours, right? And if we approach one feeling like sadness like that then we often tend to do the same thing with other feelings, like, anxiety. We feel like, I feel anxious, I shouldn't feel like that, and then we amplify that. And poor sleep quality can, oftentimes can be insomnia, right? It could be insomnia, and same thing, that I'm awake at night, that shouldn't be happening. And so when I hear this, I think more of like inner struggles are all the same. So it doesn't surprise me if somebody who struggled with depression also struggles with sleep, because these struggles all come from the same place. And I think we will actually skip to this one here, which was the kind of like the most eye-popping one, which said that if women sleep less than 6 hours a night compared with average of 7 hours during the last month of pregnancy, as measured by actigraphy and sleep pressures, they're increased for longer labors and 4.5 times more cesarean sections and more spontaneous preterm deliveries. And that one was kind of like, okay, what's this about? So I looked at the first reference, which was this one, which was not experimental, it was also a review article. So I looked at this one from Lee et al., and that one we will look more closely at, because I thought that could be interesting to really understand, like, where does that number come from. And so let me share this screen. It is this one. So here's the actual article referred to. Sleep in late pregnancy predicts length of labor and type of a delivery, from University of California, San Francisco. And basically what they did was they had, there was a study, like there was a fairly large group of women included. Okay, so there was 131 women included. They were 32 years of age. I think this was the first pregnancy, and they had them wear like actigraphy and like a sleep tracker type thing, and they checked their sleep, like sleep questionnaires, etc., and other measures, and then they try to see like, okay, would this predict how long labor was and whether they had a C-section or a regular delivery. And in table 1, or actually let's start here. Let's start with table 2 and 3, where they look at what's called wakefulness after sleep onset, basically how much you're awake after you first fell asleep, and total sleep time. They look at so here in table 3, they look at that WASO, TST, sleep quality, and they look to see if that was correlated with type of delivery. And they saw that WASO, which is like wakefulness after sleep onset, if you had more wakefulness after sleep onset, you were more likely to have a cesarean section, and that was statistically significant. And I think the same thing with the short sleep also. And so this is basically why they, this is what they make, what they highlight in their article, like, oh, we saw that if you had trouble sleeping, you were more likely to have a C-section. And I could talk about again how this is like this doesn't establish causality and all this, but the interesting thing here is like they sort of downplay something until the very end here, where they say, and this struck me, they saw in this study infant birth weight was associated with labor outcomes. Women with larger infants had longer labors and were more likely to have cesarean deliveries. And then you go like, oh, aha. And actually they did put that up in this table 1 as well, where we see that infant birth weight actually predicted labor duration and whether there was a cesarean C-section or not. And then again, it becomes like this moment when you're like, oh, so sleep was just like a side effect of this. And it of course this explains it, right? If you have a woman with a larger baby, maybe who had gestational diabetes, because that's associated, right? A woman with a larger baby is more likely, of course, to have more trouble sleeping, be up more, sleep shorter, and have a C-section, and maybe have a longer labor. Like, then you're like, oh, sleep didn't have anything to do with that either. And so we end where we always end, which is there's nothing there. There's no evidence that whatever claims have been made about insomnia and short sleep causing any like health issues, so far in our Herd Online explorations, we have not found any evidence backing that up. And that becomes true again when it comes to pregnancy and pregnancy related outcomes and things of that nature. So yeah, hope you found this helpful. And as always, any comments, leave them in the comment section, and I'll conclude there. Thanks so much for today. And tomorrow we'll have our live Q&A. So hope to see you there. Bye for now.